Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new around here, hello, welcome, my name is Charlotte. I haven't filmed one of these videos for a while, so bear with me if everything goes wrong, or if I can't speak, or if the lighting's terrible. I just haven't been super motivated to film a video like this for a while. I had the motivation today. I put some makeup on. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about my favourites of 2020. I was originally just going to do a top 10 favourite books of 2020, but as I've been in a bit of a reading slump this year, or this year hasn't really been the best for me in terms of reading, I just didn't feel like I could scrape together 10 books and talk about those 10 books in a happy mood, or as if I actually care about them. And I was dreading filming the video, and I just knew that I'd prefer to film a video where I only talk about a small selection of books, but then fill it out and then accompany that with other stuff, so other favourites, such as TV shows and films. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 3 favourite books I've read this year, my top 3 TV shows that I've watched this year, and my top 3 films I've watched this year. So I'm going to start off with my top 3 favourite books of the year, just so I can get them out of the way, because not going to lie, this is the part of the video that I'm dreading the most, or don't want to do the most. These 3 books definitely are some of my favourite books of the year, but I don't really feel like I have many others. I will also be doing honourable mentions of each of the categories. So when I say that these are my top 3 favourite books of 2020, these are the books I have read in 2020. They're not necessarily 2020 releases, but they're just the books I've read in 2020. I have everything written down here in my Hannah Montana notebook that I had when I was a kid, and I feel like this is quite fitting at the moment, seeing as I'm obsessed with Hannah Montana at the moment. So the honourable mentions that I have that didn't make the cut but are still amazing books that I think I gave 5 out of 5 stars are Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rene Lodge. This is an amazing non-fiction book talking about black history and racism within the UK. I think anybody who's read this and anybody who's been on the internet over the past year just knows how amazing this book is, and it was just so great to listen to on audiobook, and I learnt so much, and it's just such a powerful read, so I definitely recommend it. The next one is Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu. This is a great girl power, girl standing up against sexist guys in their school book, and it was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. And then we have the final book in the Magnus Chase trilogy, which is Magnus Chase and the Ship of the Dead. This was just an amazing, perfect conclusion to this trilogy, and I had so much fun reading this book. So coming in at number 3 is You Should See Me in the Crown by Leah Johnson. I feel like this is going to be on a lot of people's favourite books of 2020 list. This just took BookTube by storm this year. It is a 2020 release, and it was just so great. This follows the main character Liz, and she's just found out that she's not going to get the scholarship to the college that she wants to go to, and there is no other way apart from the scholarship that she's going to be able to afford to go to this college. Then she remembers that whoever wins prom queen and king at her school gets a scholarship to the college of their choice, so she decides to run for it. And even though she's not one of the popular kids, and this is not something that she would have done if she hadn't lost the scholarship, she still goes for it, and along the way she meets a girl, they fall in love. This is a queer black girl lead story, and it is so good. It was so cute, so heartwarming, and I just loved it so much. I just loved the unapologetic queerness in this. There was nothing in it about her realising her sexuality. She knows that she likes girls from the get-go, from the beginning of this book. Liz is bisexual, and she was just so fabulous. I just loved her, and I loved the love story with her and the girl that she falls in love with. There were scenes in this that literally made my heart just die with the queerness and the cute queerness. It's definitely one that I would love to reread, or could see myself rereading in the future, just for the memes and just for how cute it is. I think for anybody who's read this year knows just how great this is, and recently I heard Shannon over on 155 Books say that this would be so great as like a Netflix film adaptation, kind of like To All the Boys I Loved Before. It would just be so beautiful to see this adapted by Netflix as a film. Can we get that? Netflix, if you're watching, which you're not, can we get that? We want that. Give it to us now. Coming in at number 2 is one that I read earlier in the year, and is one that I always knew that I would like and was very excited and hyped to read, but also very nervous because I knew that it was going to destroy me. And it did. And that is The Nightingale by Kristin. This is a story set in World War II in France, and it's about these 2 sisters and how they take part and what their role is within World War II, and it broke my heart. This starts off slow. I remember starting it being like, is this meant to be like everybody's favourite book? Is this really meant to be like an amazing book? It takes you a while to get used to the characters and the writing and the world. It's not the world because obviously it's our world, but the story and the build up to the story. But once you hit the story and once you hit the big plot and where the book is going to go and the emotions of it, this book destroyed me in so many ways. And if you've been on this channel since the beginning of this year when I read this book, you'll know that. I sobbed when I read this book, and I don't cry at books. I rarely cry at books. I might get a tear in my eye. I don't sob, and I sobbed to the ends of the earth for this book, and it just broke me, but also made me feel so great at the same time because it was such a great read. It's just such a great story about these 2 sisters. They're 2 very different sisters, and they both go through very different things. At the same time, they go through a lot. they go through a lot together and separately, and also because it backs between timelines, you kind of get chapters sometimes from the present day, but you don't really know who those chapters are from. You're left guessing throughout as well, and then when it gets to the end and you find out who these chapters are from and then what has happened, and kind of tells you obviously what happened in the future and in the present with these sisters, hit me even more. Highly recommend this book if you're a sucker for historical fiction books, also if you're a sucker for crying at books, if you want to cry at a book. And I did recently hear that this is being adapted, that we are, I think, maybe getting a film or something from this, and I think I've heard that Dakota and Elle Fanning have been cast, and yes, but I also still see Dakota and Elle Fanning as like children, because obviously they were children throughout my childhood, but now they're obviously like women in their 20s, so it kind of fits, kind of works, and I cannot wait to see that adapted if it does get adapted, hopefully. Definitely deserves to be in my top 3 favourite books because it will always stay with me, and it just broke me. It broke me. And the book at number 1, my favourite book of 2020, is actually one that I read this month in December, and so I haven't actually talked about it on my channel yet. I think the problem with this year is, even though I love this book and it's definitely one of my favourite books, not just of 2020, but I think it's definitely going to go into my favourites ever, I still don't feel like it was the best book I ever read. Like, it was great, it was amazing, I adored it, but I think it just goes along this year. This year hasn't been great in terms of reading for me, but that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Shannon is watching this, hopefully, and just crying, and she's like, yeah, cheering at the screen, because she loves this book, and the reason why I picked this up and read this and got so hyped about it was because of her. This is a dark academia book, and a lot of people who have read The Secret History and then read this are like, oh, it's just a rip-off of The Secret History, but joke's on you, I haven't read The Secret History, so to me this is perfect. This follows a bunch of student actors at college, at uni, in their last year, and they go to this kind of prestigious, I think, kind of acting arts college during their 4th year. They're a very tight-knit group because obviously they've been through everything together. During their 4th year, one person dies, and it's the whole, like, who did it? But also at the beginning of the book, we do follow Oliver. Oliver is the person that we follow. At the beginning of the book, Oliver is just getting out of prison for the murder of this person, but that doesn't mean that Oliver actually did it. I was always like, oh, I think I'd like dark academia, but I'd never read a dark academia book before. I just kind of felt like it was my vibe, and I can tell you, it's my vibe. I love the dark academia genre now, even though I've read one book from it, but I feel like from just watching edits and seeing like the aesthetic, and maybe probably from watching some TV shows and films that have kind of got like dark academia laced through it, I can tell that it's my vibe, and then it's my genre, and then I love it. I just love how close-knit these group of friends were, but also how much they kind of hated each other as well. I just loved how them as people and then them as a friendship group were just so flawed, and that a lot of the time to see them fighting and hating each other, but also they love each other. I'm like, I feel that. Just think about it, how many times do you school with you like a good group of friends of yours, but you know at the end of the day you love each other, but then also there's sometimes where you're just like, oh my god, I hate you so much, but you don't actually, but then you do. I just loved how flawed they were, and I think it really brought so much drama and so much angst and so much depth to the story, and I loved the tone, and I was listening to like classical music while reading it, and it just set the tone so well. And the scene when the person actually dies and they find the body, and try not to spoil it, but you know that someone's died at the beginning, but the scene where they realise that their best friend's dead, or their friend's dead, oh my god, I nearly cried. The way it was written was just so tense and so beautifully written, and you can just feel the anger and the pain and how tense it was between the friends. I just felt like I was there watching it and being a part of it, and just, I was just the emotions running high. Even though I think near the end, or kind of before the big ending, it kind of dipped a bit, it's kind of dragging a little bit. The ending just, again, was so emotional and just so suspenseful and just so tense. I think that is one thing that this book is when you get to the nitty gritty scenes, and the scenes where it's like drama to the full, it's so tense, and you can feel the angst and the pressure between these friends, and it just gets so beautiful, and it's just so great. I cannot wait to read more dark academia. If it's going to be anything like this, I'm just going to devour it and love it, and I just want to consume anything dark academia. So please, in the comments below, leave me recommendations of dark academia books, films, TV shows, all that. I need them. I need them in my life. Now that I've read this, I need them in my life. Now I'm going to be moving on to my favourite TV shows of 2020. So how I classified and narrowed these down is I can't have watched anything from these shows before 2020. So it kind of narrowed it down a bit, so it made it easier. But then also it did still make it quite difficult, because when I was trying to pick like number 3, I was like, there's so many of them, I don't know which one to pick. So my honourable mentions, going from like the bottom, is The Haunting of Bly Manor. Yes, I know that The Haunting of Hill House came out in 2018 and I watched that in 2018, but seeing it's an anthology series, I feel like I can kind of count it. I think I'd still give it an honourable mention seeing it is anthology, and I did love it a lot. It was a great series, not as good as Haunting of Hill House, but I feel like a lot of people say that even though they love Bly Manor, but Bly Manor was still amazing. It was so queer, so gay, so beautiful, so emotional, and I loved it. It was so good, and I definitely think I will rewatch it like so many times. Next honourable mention is Hollywood. I forgot this came out in 2020, but then when I realised it came out in 2020, I was so happy because then I could talk about it. Hollywood is a Ryan Murphy produced show, and if you don't know me, I love Ryan Murphy. I will consume anything he makes. I know he makes a lot, and it's getting silly now, but I will consume everything he makes. This is a show kind of focusing on the glamorous Hollywood era of film, and it also just follows a cast of characters, some who are already in the business, some who are trying to get into the business, and at first I was like, where is this going? How are all these characters connected? But then it all came together and it was beautiful and it was amazing. And the next honourable mention that I want to talk about is When They See Us. Once again, this came out maybe a year or 2 years ago and is one that loads of people have watched, and I finally got around to watching it this year. If you want to learn more about the Central Park Five, which are 5 young black teen boys who were wrongly accused and wrongly jailed for raping this white woman in Central Park, you need to watch this. It is fantastic. Acting is amazing. It's so emotional and it just gets your blood boiling, because you're seeing these 5 teen boys, they're younger than, they're 18, no older than 18, being brutally, verbally abused by the police just because they're black and just because they were in the park that day. So coming in at number 3, I love this show and I cannot wait for season 2 to come out in January. That is Prodigal Son. So you Criminal Minds fans out there, if you're feeling a bit lost, if you've got like an empty hole in you because you're like, I miss Criminal Minds, now it's over. Prodigal Son. This follows our main character Malcolm, and he is an FBI profiler, but the FBI are like, we need to kick you out, you are dangerous. So they kick him out, and his police friend, who's known him since he was a kid, gives him his job as like a profiler at the NYPD. What we learn about Malcolm is that when he was a kid, like early 90s, his father was arrested and imprisoned because he is a serial killer. Our main character is investigating crimes and he's like solving crimes, solving murders, but then also his daddy is a serial killer. We're just following Malcolm trying to solve murders, and he's got a string of mental health problems. He deals with anxiety, insomnia, night terrors because obviously what happened in his childhood. We're also following him as he's trying to find out more about his dad and the kind of era of that time when his dad was a serial killer and maybe somebody else that his dad killed. It's got Tom Payne playing Malcolm Bright, who I love from Waterloo Road, and some of you might know as Jesus from The Walking Dead. It's got Michael Sheen, our Lord and Saviour, our Welsh Lord and Saviour, Michael Sheen, playing Mr. Serial Killer. And then you've also got Danny, one of the other detectives working at NYPD. I love her, I want to marry her, but I also want her to be with Malcolm. When you talk about that one time, Aurora, who plays Danny, when she was asked, do you think that Danny is lesbian or bisexual? And then Aurora basically confirmed that Danny is a bisexual with a preference for women. If you liked Criminal Minds and you like detectives solving murders, but also like serial killer sort of thing, we'll give Prodigal Son a watch. I cannot wait for January 12th so I can watch season 2 because it was amazing. I loved it. The next show that I want to talk about, I pretty much watched this in one sitting. I think I watched the first episode one day and then I watched the rest of the season the next day. They're only 20-minute episodes and I mainly watched it drunk on my own. I just got my degree, I needed to celebrate, and that is Love, Victor. So you might know this as a sequel spin-off TV show to Love, Simon. I went into this being like, it's probably going to be good because it's gay, but also I was a bit hesitant, like, are they just trying to make money off this? This took me on a ride of emotions. Yes, okay, I was drunk, drinking champagne by myself in my bed crying, but this took me on a ride of emotions and I would have cried even if I wasn't drunk. So we follow our main character Victor, and he, with his sister and his parents, have just moved to Georgia, Atlanta, that area, because they just need a fresh start because drama with the parents happened back in their old home. Joins this new school and he's worried about joining this new school, making friends because he knows that he likes guys and he's worried to come out, or even the thought of coming out because he doesn't know how people are going to accept him. But then he hears about this guy called Simon who used to go to his school, who had this amazing coming out gay love story, and he's thinking, oh, okay, maybe people will appreciate me more. But while he's there, he also gets a girlfriend and he starts liking this girl called Mia, who they kind of form like a little friendship group, and his friend likes Mia's friend, and that's really cute as well. So really this show is about Simon dealing with his sexuality. He knows that he likes guys. It's not him being like, I think I like guys, but do I really like guys? It's him being like, I like guys, but do I still like girls? Do I also like girls? Also deals with other stuff to do with like heritage, because he is, if I can remember off the top of my head, I think he's Colombian, Puerto Rican American. Also deals with the like parental troubles and divorces and cheating. One of the obviously the main storylines is that Victor starts to like and kind of fall in love with the guy that he's working at this barista coffee place who he knows is gay because he's got a boyfriend. It packs a punch into 20-minute episodes, but it's just so fabulous. I think what the difference is between this and Love, Simon is that with Love, Simon, it's just a film, so we haven't got as much time to really love these characters. We still love these characters, we still love that film. With Love, Victor, you get so much more time to love these characters and to delve into more storylines and to more things. And the guy who plays the guy that Victor likes, who he works with, if you UK folks used to watch Friday Download, it's George from Friday Download.
Welcome to the Style Booth.
Do you hear me screaming? Because I did when I heard that, when I saw it. I was like, I recognise you. It was like, oh my god, it's George from Friday Download. It's just such a good queer show, and it just warmed my heart, and I loved it. And I cannot wait for season 2. But my #1 favourite show of 2020, and I think you all should guess this if you know me, is Dark. Do I have to say much? Because if you know me, and if you've seen me on the Instagram and on this channel of the past few months, or since like March time, you would know how much I love Dark. Dark is a Netflix German show, and it's fabulous. It's set in a small town in Germany called Winden, and this kid's gone missing. And it's all about, oh my god, where's this kid gone? I'm gonna discover where this kid gone. So like a typical, you know, police thing, sort of like that. But then we find out that time travel is involved. And I'm not gonna say much more, because with this show you don't want to know much more, because it deals with a lot, and it deals with so much science, wobbly, wibbly wobbly stuff, that you don't really want to know much. I don't think I've ever watched a show that is so perfectly created. And when I say that, you're probably thinking, no show is perfectly created, there's gonna be some loopholes. You can tell that this is a show that the writers planned out from beginning to end. It's not one of those shows that they wrote the first season and then like, oh, we've got to write a second season now, let's try and work it in. They knew the story they had to tell. They knew the beginning, they knew the end, and they just had to fill in the bits in between and how they were going to get to A to B. And the 3rd season came out this year. I binged it in like 2 days. And I just sat there afterwards being like, I hate this ending. But then 30 minutes later I was like, no, this is the best ending ever. This is the best thing I've ever seen. I can't say much because I can't spoil it. But if you want and I hate comparing it because I sometimes feel like it's better. If you want something that's got like Stranger Things, Doctor Who, The Devouring Grey, those sort of vibes, but also with a bit of like Broadchurch because the whole like police thing. But then it's also got like family drama because it also connects like all these 4 families within the town. We watched it for one of my university modules, and that is why and how I've loved it so much. I can't fault it, and it's the reason why I'm also learning German on Duolingo. The theme song was my most played song on Spotify of 2020, so if that tells you anything, it's got great music. It's got great music. I've discovered some amazing songs through this show. Now we're moving on to the films. We're moving on to my top 3 favourite films of the year. Even though it's not the end of the year yet, like I have to preface this, it's not the end of the year yet, so you never know, I could watch a film that I love, a 2020 release that I love, and add it to my thing. I am watching a 2020 release today, but I know it won't be in my top 10 or my top 3. I'm basically going to be watching The Kissing Booth 2 because I've been putting it off, and I was like, I don't want to watch it because I hated The Kissing Booth. But I've got to that point now when I preached about the faults and the badness of The Kissing Booth that I can now appreciate it for being a trash film. So I'm now going to watch Kissing Booth 2 tonight, or today, because I've been watching the 2 after films and loving them, so I just thought it's time for trash films. But anyway, that's another story. We can talk about that in my December wrap up. Basically, this is easy. They just had to be 2020 releases. I haven't watched as many this year because not many have come out. I have noted that 2 of my top 3 are ones that I got to see in the cinema when they reopened in the summer. And I think it shows that a lot of my favourite films, or a lot of the films I love that have been released that year, are going to be ones I see in the cinema. So obviously, because a lot of films have been pushed back and the cinemas haven't been open, I haven't been watching as many 2020 releases, and I haven't been watching many 2020 releases that I know are going to be like my top. And basically my honourable mentions are going to be 4, 5 and 6 on the list. So number 6, one of my honourable mentions is Mangrove, which is one of the short films or films within the Small Act series, going along with what I said about When They See Us and why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. If you want to learn about black injustice and racism within the UK, and you want to learn about 9 black people in the UK who were wrongfully arrested and trialled for rioting when they were just protesting for their human rights and protesting for black lives, you need to watch this. It is so fantastic. Definitely go and watch the whole Small Act series. I've preached about this in my last wrap up and my November wrap up. My next honourable mention, which is number 5, is Issy and Ossie, which is a German Netflix rom-com. I watched this because it's got Martha from Dark in it. I watched this probably like April, May time. Basically, if you want rich girl, poor boy, fake dating, it was perfect. It was so cute. It was amazing. I love them. I want Ossie as a boyfriend, as maybe a fake boyfriend and maybe a boyfriend, because I want a guy to brush my teeth for me after I've just thrown up because I'm too drunk. But this was such a cute film and I loved it. My last honourable mention to number 4 is The Boys in the Band. This is once again a Ryan Murphy thing. This is a Netflix film that's basically a redo of both a play and a film from like the 60s, and it follows a bunch of gay guys, gay friends, getting together for a party in the 60s, I think. Obviously when being gay and all that was a lot more like, it's illegal. Having a party for one of their friends' birthdays, and then a straight guy comes into the mix. And if you just want a film about a load of gay guys who are very different in their own way, just opening up and being emotional and vulnerable with everybody and each other, also arguing and being dicks to each other, and it's got an amazing cast and all the gay guys are played by gay men, by gay actors. Now moving on to my top 3 favourite films of 2020. Coming in at number 3 is one that everybody is talking about on Twitter, or especially on film Twitter, and that is Tenet. I went to see this in the cinema by myself. Love going to the cinema by myself. I don't really feel like I need to talk and say what this film is about, because honestly I went into it not knowing anything. I just went into it knowing it's Christopher Nolan with Robert Pattinson and John David Washington, and it just follows a main character called the protagonist, and he has to deal with this thing called Tenet. And I'm not going to say anything else because it is such a complex film that throughout it you're trying to guess what is happening and what will happen and what has happened. It's a kind of like, what is this thing and what is going on? It's confusing, and a lot of people have come out of this film being like, I didn't understand it, but I think I do understand it, and I did understand it while watching it. And then when people asked me to explain, I couldn't, because it's one of those things that it makes sense in my head, but with words it doesn't. There is a beautiful love story between John David Washington's character and Robert Pattinson's character. If you just want a classic Christopher Nolan film, kind of like Inception, you're gonna love Tenet. And if you're somebody who doesn't always necessarily need to properly understand a film to appreciate a film, you're gonna love it. I really want to rewatch it because I haven't watched it since seeing it, so I want to rewatch it with the knowledge I have after I saw it. Coming in at number 2 is a Netflix film, and I was so excited for this film and I knew I was going to love it. I think about it all the time, and I definitely want to rewatch all these films I want to rewatch, but I definitely want to rewatch this film, and that is The Devil All the Time. This is a big cast film, but it's got some amazing people in it, like my love of my life, Tom Holland. It's got Bill Skarsgård in it, it's got Robert Pattinson in it, it's got Sebastian Stan in it, it's got Riley Keough in it, it's got other people but I can't think off the top of my head. It's got a amazing casting in it. It basically follows some people in this town, and I forget what it's called, but it's a really weird name. But when you hear it, you're like, only a town in the 40s to 60s in the deep south of America will be called that. Editing Charlotte to say that I remembered and checked what it's called, and it's called Knock 'em Stiff. It's meant to sound just like it rolls off the tongue, like knock 'em stiff, but it's knock 'em stiff. Knock them stiff. Knock 'em stiff. But it follows like a bunch of people in this town, in that era, in that part of America. It's one guy, he meets a girl, and then they have a kid, and they're rocky kind of relationship and their like story. We jump forward and then it follows their kid, who's played by Tom Holland, and then the mess he gets into with this new preacher coming to town, and it just keeps you on the edge of your seat all the time, and you're rooting for Tom Holland's character because obviously like he's the main character and he's cute, but then also you realise that he's not a pitch perfect character. Like none of these characters are perfect. And if you want to hear Robert Pattinson put on a over-the-top, really well done deep south accent, then you should definitely watch this. But this film was just so good, and I really want to rewatch it because it's just I was on the edge of my seat, I was emotional, I was crying. And my number 1, my favourite film of 2020, and if I came out of 2020 with this not being my number 1 favourite film of the year, I would have failed myself, or the film would have failed me, and that is Bill and Ted Face the Music. I haven't watched this since I saw it in the cinema, and I need to, for my own sanity. This is the 3rd and long-awaited film in the Bill and Ted series. Bill and Ted started in the late 80s and had a sequel in the early 90s, and is about 2 best friends at high school. In the first film, they're failing history, so they get given by this guy from the future this telephone box. So it's kind of like Doctor Who. I always kind of laugh that it's kind of ripped off from Doctor Who, but they get given this kind of telephone box that they can send them throughout time, and they go and collect historical figures to help them create their history report. Because Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is my favourite film of all time, I knew I was going to love Bill and Ted Face the Music, whatever happened. The second film, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, is also just fantastic, just as good. All 3 films are really amazing, and I think for this one, if you went into it not really being a massive fan of it or not having seen but the other Bill and Ted films, you're not really going to like it because it's just none of the jokes going to hit and it's not going to be as emotional for you. But for me, who just loves this series so much, it's so good. Obviously in Bill and Ted Face the Music, we see them when they're older, and we know from the first 2 films that Bill and Ted are these 2 best friends who also want to be like a rock stars and they want to be in a band, and we know from the people in the future that their band goes on to save the world and create peace and harmony throughout the world. They have to write this song for that to happen, and we get to the present day and they haven't written this song yet, and they're trying to still write this song, and they're married and they've got kids, and it's about them being like, we need to write this song so we can save the world so the world doesn't end, and they get help from their daughters. If you're a massive fan of Bill and Ted, even if you're hesitant about it, just go and watch it, please, I beg. And I still listen to the music from the first film and cry, and I listen to the song that they wrote or eventually wrote in Face the Music and cry. So those are my favourites of 2020. As I said, was going to do a top 10 favourite books of the year, but it's just not going to happen. As you can see, I was more excited to talk about the TV shows and films as I was the books. I think this year, despite it being a whole mess, I've watched and read, and even with music, listened to some amazing stuff and some amazing content and some amazing art. And that's just what I love and seek in my life, because it's a massive part of my life, because I want to go into working into TV and film and books and media. It's just a massive part of my life. And as long as I can consume great stuff throughout the year, it's all that matters to me. It's all that needs to make me happy. So I hope you all enjoy this video. Please let me know in the comments below what are some of your favourite things of 2020. So the favourite books you read, the favourite TV shows you watched, and the favourite films you watched. And also let me know if some of these are your favourites, or if you hated some of these, you know, controversial opinions. If you're new around here, did not get to subscribe. All my social media links are linked in the description below. And with that all said and done, I will see you all in my next video.